You? A mathematics competition? This is a prestigious event. This boy is out of his depth.
Are you serious? The poor kid.
Professor said mathematicians failed 50 years, but 12-year-old black boy cracked it in class. You do not belong in this room, doctor. Franklin Aldridge said it clearly. No hesitation. No apology. He said it the way a man says something he has said many times before and never once been corrected. 412 people heard him say it. The boy he said it to was 12 years old, 4 feet 11 inches tall, wearing a gray school uniform, 2 sizes that had been ironed so carefully you could see the crease lines from across the room. His name was Marcus Coleman. He was standing in the doorway of the Whitmore Hall Lecture Theater at the University of Chicago, holding a permission slip in one hand and a composition notebook in the other. He did not move. He did not speak. He just stood there with his feet planted on the threshold, looking at the professor the way a person looks at something they have already decided not to be afraid of. Dr. Aldridge pointed at the door behind him. This is the Illinois Young Mathematicians Invitational. It has been running for 41 years. In 41 years, not a single participant has come from a public school on the South Side. There is a reason for that. He paused. Go back to wherever you came from. Marcus's voice, when it finally came, was so quiet that the people in the front row had to lean forward to hear it. Sir, he said, my name is on the list. That was all he said, and it was the truth. His name was on the list. And what happened over the next 6 hours inside Whitmore Hall would be talked about for years, not just in mathematics, not just in Chicago, but in every room where someone has ever been told, before they even open their mouth, that they do not belong. Let me take you back to where this story really starts. The house on Calumet Avenue had 4 rooms and a basement that flooded every spring. The basement had been flooding for 11 years. Marcus's mother, Gloria Coleman, had called the city twice about it and gotten the same answer both times. Someone would come and look at it. No one ever came. The house was in the Woodlawn neighborhood, 2 blocks from a bus stop that ran every 40 minutes if the bus was on time, which it usually was not. Gloria worked the morning shift at a laundry facility on the west side. She left at 5:15 every day before Marcus was awake and came home at 3:45, before he got back from school. There was always something on the stove when he walked in. A pot of rice, a covered pan of whatever she had managed to put together from what was left at the end of the week. Gloria Coleman was 41 years old. She had 1 year of community college behind her and $37 in a savings account she had not added to since September. She was not poor the way people imagine poor. She was not desperate, not chaotic, not broken. She was simply stretched. Every single month she was stretched from the first day to the last, doing math in her head at the grocery store, at the gas station, and in the middle of the night when she woke up and lay there in the dark running numbers until sleep came back. She did not know her son was doing the exact same thing. Except for him, the numbers were not bills. For Marcus, numbers were the most alive thing in the world. He had been this way since he was 5. His kindergarten teacher called Gloria in and said, Mrs. Coleman, your son finished the 1st grade workbook. I don't know what to do with him. His 3rd grade teacher said he had finished the 4th and 5th grade material, and could she please get him something harder? His 5th grade teacher said he had found a mistake in the textbook on page 147, and been correct about it, which the publisher later confirmed. By the time Marcus was 11, he was working through books he had borrowed from the Harold Washington Library. College-level books, graduate-level books, books with equations in them that made his teacher's eyes go wide when he showed her what he had been reading for fun. He could not explain why numbers made sense to him the way they did. It was not something he had decided. It was something he was. The same way some children can hear a song once and play it back perfectly, Marcus could look at a mathematical pattern and feel it arrange itself inside him, like it had always been there, waiting. But there was no gifted program at his school. The testing had been cut 3 years earlier when the district ran out of funding. Marcus sat in a classroom, learning things he had already taught himself. answering questions he had known the answers to for 2 years, and trying very hard not to make the other kids feel bad about it. He never talked about what he could do. Not at school, not in the neighborhood. There was no benefit to it. And he understood that even at 12. The neighborhood had a way of responding to things that stood out, not always badly, but unpredictably. And Marcus had learned early that unpredictable was something to avoid, so he was quiet about it. At school, he answered when called on, and not otherwise. He did not raise his hand for every question. He turned in his work without flourish. He got straight hundreds on every test and accepted them without comment and moved on. His teachers liked him because he was no trouble. None of them knew that he was finishing their assignments in 4 minutes and spending the rest of the class time working through problems he had set himself in the margin of his notebook. The one thing he could not hide was the library. He went 4 times a week. He had been going since he was 8, when a librarian named Mr. Deshaun Watts noticed him sitting in the stacks with a book that was 2 reading levels above the children's section, and asked if he needed help finding something. Marcus said no, he had found what he was looking for. Mr. Watts came back 20 minutes later, looked at the book and said, "How much of that do you actually understand?" Marcus said, "Most of it, but page 94 has an error." Mr. Watts checked page 94. There was an error. After that, Mr. Watts started setting books aside for Marcus, pulling things from the adult non-fiction section that he thought might hold his attention. He was usually right. By age 11, Marcus had a system. He went to the library on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. He took out the maximum number of books each time. He read them at the kitchen table on school nights and at the library on weekends. When he found something he could not fully follow, he wrote the question down in his composition notebook and came back to it later. Most of the time, by the time he came back to it, he had already figured it out on his own. His mother knew. She was the one who carried the extra library books home in her work bag when Marcus had already reached the borrowing limit on his own card. She was the one who sat across from him at the kitchen table on Friday nights while he worked through problems, not understanding the math, but understanding the look on his face when he found something that surprised him. That look, the sharp, focused, almost startled look of a mind encountering something worthy of it, was the thing she lived for on those Friday nights. She never told him that. She just kept bringing the books. She also never told him about his father's notebooks. Joseph Coleman had died of a heart attack at 31 when Marcus was 4 years old. He had been a mechanic by trade, but a self-taught mathematician by instinct. Not at the level Marcus was reaching, but the same impulse, the same inability to leave a pattern alone until it made sense. There were 3 composition notebooks in the closet in Gloria's room, filled with Joseph's handwriting. She had not shown them to Marcus yet. She was not sure when the right time was. She just knew it was not yet. Marcus had one teacher who saw all of it clearly. Her name was Mrs. Adrian Booker, and she taught 7th grade math at the school Marcus attended, the same school she had graduated from 22 years earlier. She was 34 years old, drove a 2009 Honda Civic with a cracked passenger window, and had been trying to get Marcus into some kind of advanced program for 18 months. In February of that year, she found it, the Illinois Young Mathematicians Invitational, open to students ages 11 through 14, held annually at the University of Chicago, with a first-place prize of $15,000 awarded as an academic scholarship. The registration fee was $75. The deadline was in 3 weeks. Mrs. Booker went to the principal. The school had no discretionary funds. She went to the district. The district said it could not fund individual competition entries. She spent 2 evenings writing emails to the university's mathematics department, asking about waivers. No one responded. On a Thursday morning, she put $75 of her own money in an envelope and slid it under the principal's office door with a note that said, "Register Marcus Coleman, please." She did not tell Marcus where the money came from. She told him the school had found a small fund. He believed her. She did not correct him. Now let me tell you about Dr. Franklin Aldridge, because understanding him matters. He is not a villain in the way movies make villains. He is something more ordinary and more dangerous than that. Franklin Aldrich had been a professor of mathematics at the University of Chicago for 33 years. He had a doctoral degree from Princeton, a second honorary degree from Oxford, and a framed photograph on his office wall of himself shaking hands with 3 former governors of Illinois. He had published 180 academic papers. He had received the Chauvenet Prize, one of the most respected awards in mathematical writing, twice. He had students who were now tenured professors at universities across the country, and he knew all of their names, and he spoke about them the way a man speaks about a dynasty he has built. He created the Illinois Young Mathematicians Invitational in 1983. He ran it himself every year. He selected the problems personally. He sat at the judging table. He handed out the prize. In 41 years, every winner had come from one of 7 private schools in the Chicago metropolitan area. 3 schools had produced winners multiple times. The average family income of winning students, which no one had officially calculated, but which was not a secret to anyone paying attention, was somewhere around $240,000 a year. Aldrich believed this was simply how talent distributed itself. Some people had it. Most people did not. The ones who had it tended to come from environments that cultivated it. Private tutors, specialized schools, parents with advanced degrees who understood what they were looking at in a child. It was not prejudice in his mind. It was observation. He had observed it for 41 years, and he had never once been given a reason to think differently. There was one other thing about Dr. Franklin Aldrich that you need to know. In 1974, when he was 29 years old and still a doctoral student at Princeton, he wrote a paper on a problem in combinatorial number theory. The problem was elegant and specific. It asked whether a particular type of numerical sequence, one that expanded according to a certain set of recursive rules, would always converge toward a predictable pattern no matter how large the starting number became. He called it the Aldrich convergence problem. The paper attracted attention immediately. Other mathematicians looked at it. They agreed the problem was real, that it was interesting, that the convergence he was asking about was not obviously provable by any existing method. They tried to prove it. They failed. Over the following 50 years, the Aldrich convergence problem was attempted by more than 60 professional mathematicians at universities around the world. Several published partial proofs that were later found to contain errors. One mathematician spent 4 years on it and produced a paper that was retracted 6 months after publication. A research group at MIT worked on it collaboratively for 2 years and gave up. Aldrich kept a file of every failed attempt. He had added to it steadily for 50 years. The file was 4 inches thick. He did not consider this a failure. He considered it a monument. The unsolved problem proved something he needed proving, that he had, at 29, created something that the best mathematical minds in the world could not dismantle. That meant something to him in a way he could not fully articulate but deeply felt. Every year at the Invitational, he mentioned the problem in his opening remarks. He described it as a reminder that mathematics still had mysteries. What he meant, though he would not have said it this way, was that it was a reminder that he was still, at 73, unreachable. That was the man who told Marcus Coleman he did not belong in the room. Marcus had taken 2 buses to get to Whitmore Hall that morning. He left his house at 6:45, before his mother was awake. She had laid out his uniform the night before, pressed it herself, hung it on the back of his door so he would see it first thing. She had packed his bag too, 2 sharpened pencils, 1 pen, a small ruler, and the composition notebook he had been using since September to work through problems he found in the graduate-level books from the library. In that notebook, on pages 47 through 61, there were 14 pages of dense, careful handwriting. Marcus had been working on something for 6 weeks. He had not told Mrs. Booker about it yet. He had not told anyone. It was still half-formed, still fragile. He was not sure it was right. He got to the university campus at 7:52 and found Whitmore Hall after asking directions twice. The building was wide and gray, with large windows and stone steps at the entrance. Students in blazers and pressed slacks were moving toward the doors in small groups, most of them with adults beside them, parents, coaches, tutors carrying leather portfolios. One group had matching jackets with their school name embroidered on the chest. Marcus walked in alone. He found the registration desk in the lobby and gave his name. The woman behind the desk found it on the list, handed him a numbered badge, and pointed him toward the lecture theater. He walked through the double doors and was looking for a seat when a voice cut across the room. "You, stop." He stopped. Dr. Franklin Aldridge was standing at the front of the lecture theater in a charcoal suit, looking at Marcus the way a security guard looks at someone he has already decided is in the wrong place. The room was filling in. Students were taking their seats. Everyone was now looking at the boy in the doorway. "You do not belong in this room," Aldridge said. And Marcus stood there, and the room went quiet. Aldridge walked toward him slowly, unhurried, the way a man walks when he has all the authority and knows it. "Where did you come from?" he said, not curious, dismissive. "Woodlawn," Marcus said. "South Side." Something moved across Aldridge's face. Not quite a smile. "This competition requires a qualifying school affiliation," he said. "What school are you affiliated with?" "James Weldon Johnson Middle School," Marcus said. He held out his permission slip. "It is listed on the registration. My teacher registered me." Aldridge did not take the paper. He looked at it the way you look at something you have already decided is not worth picking up. "I see." He turned back to the room, addressing the assembled students and parents as much as he was addressing Marcus. "This invitational has standards. We do not simply allow any child who finds the registration form online to walk in and take a seat among serious competitors. That would not be fair to the students who have prepared." A parent near the front nodded. Someone in the back half of the room shifted in their seat. "I am going to give you a qualifying problem," Aldridge said, turning back to Marcus. He walked to the large whiteboard at the front of the room, picked up a marker, and wrote a sequence. A long, climbing sequence of numbers that expanded according to a pattern that was not immediately obvious. Beneath it, he wrote a question. "This is a problem from the graduate level," he said. "If you can tell me what this sequence converges to, and show me why, you may stay. If you cannot, you go home. You have 5 minutes." The room was absolutely still. 412 people watched a 12-year-old boy in an oversized gray uniform walk from the doorway to the front of the room, pick up a marker from the tray below the whiteboard, and look at the problem. For 30 seconds, Marcus did not write anything. He just looked. You could see the moment his mind engaged. Something shifted in his posture, a slight settling, like a person finding their footing on uncertain ground. Then he started writing. He wrote for 4 minutes and 40 seconds. When he put the marker down and stepped back, the board was covered in careful, steady handwriting. Not frantic, not messy. Clear and deliberate, line by line, like a person who had done this kind of thinking many times before, in the quiet of a kitchen at night. Aldridge had been watching with his arms crossed. Now he walked to the board. He looked at the first line, then the second. His arms stayed crossed. Then, slowly, they fell to his sides. He read the board from top to bottom once. Then he read it again. The room was so quiet you could hear the ventilation system in the ceiling. "Where did you learn this approach?" Aldridge said. His voice had changed. Not softer, just different. Like a man who has just opened a door and found something on the other side that was not what he expected. "I worked it out myself," Marcus said. "I found a similar problem in a book at the library. I had to adapt it." "Which book?" "Analytic Number Theory by Apostle. And some notes I found online from a professor at Stanford." Aldridge stared at him. "You are 12 years old." "Yes, sir." "Sit down," Aldridge said. And then he turned away and walked back to the front of the room without saying another word. Marcus sat down. The competition began. The Illinois Young Mathematicians Invitational ran in 4 rounds over 5 hours. Each round presented a set of problems increasing in difficulty. Participants worked individually at their own desks, writing out full solutions by hand. Not just answers, but complete logical proofs showing every step of their reasoning. A panel of 3 judges reviewed each solution. The combined scores from all 4 rounds determined the winner. Marcus worked through the first round steadily. The problems were hard, but not beyond him. He could feel the shape of each one, the way a person with perfect pitch can feel a note before it fully sounds. He wrote carefully, showing every step, making sure his reasoning was visible and complete. Around him, he could hear the scratch of pencils on paper, the occasional sigh. One boy, near the window, tapping his foot in a rhythm that slowed and then stopped entirely. When the harder problems appeared in the second half of the round, Marcus did not tap his foot, he did not sigh. He worked in the same steady, unhurried way he worked at the kitchen table on Friday nights. The same way you work when you have no one watching you and no performance to give, when the only thing in the room is you and the problem. He finished the first round with 7 minutes to spare. He did not check his answers. He already knew they were right. The second round was harder. 2 of the 6 problems were unlike anything he had seen in his library books. He sat with them for longer, looked at them from different angles, felt the particular frustration of a mind trying to find a door in a wall it cannot see. The first of the 2 had a structure that seemed familiar from the outside, but opened into something strange once he started working through it. He tried 3 different approaches. The third one moved. He followed it for 2 pages and got to an answer he was not fully confident in. He circled it and moved on. The second of the 2 stopped him completely. He looked at it for 4 minutes and felt nothing. No edge, no entry point, no suggestion of a way through. He wrote 2 lines and crossed them out. He wrote 1 more line and crossed that out too. He left it blank and moved on. He got 4 of the 6. He left 2 incomplete. During the break between rounds 2 and 3, a boy from St. Matthew's Academy, a tall, confident boy named Andrew, whose father had been sitting in the front row all morning, leaned across the aisle and looked at Marcus's desk. "You got 4 on round 2? He sounded genuinely surprised. "I got 5, he added, and turned away. Marcus said nothing. He opened his composition notebook to page 47. He had been thinking about the 14 pages in the back of the notebook all morning. Through the first round and the second round and the break, something had been turning over quietly in the back of his mind. Not loudly, not urgently, just steadily, the way a thought turns over when it is trying to find the right angle to come in from. The sequence on the whiteboard, the one Aldridge had written as a qualifying problem, the one Marcus had solved in under 5 minutes. It had reminded him of something, and the thing it reminded him of had been sitting in the back of his mind since the moment he stepped back from the whiteboard and put the marker down. It had reminded him of the Aldridge convergence problem. He stared at page 47. He read the first line, then the second. Then he closed the notebook and put it back in his bag, because round 3 was about to begin, and he needed to be present for it. Round 3, 6 more problems. He got 5. The 6th was a question about prime distributions in asymmetric sequences that required a technique he had read about once but never used. And when he tried to reconstruct it from memory, the reconstruction went sideways on the 3rd step. He left it incomplete and submitted what he had. He was sitting in 2nd place overall at that point, behind Andrew, though he did not know this because the scores were not posted until the end. Round 4. The hardest problems. He worked through 3 of them. And then, on problem 4 of the final round, something extraordinary happened. The problem was asking about a specific class of recursive numerical sequences, whether their behavior remained predictable as they scaled upward toward very large numbers, or whether at some point the predictability broke down and became chaos. Marcus read the problem once, then read it again, and then sat very still for approximately 30 seconds. The connection that had been turning over in the back of his mind all morning landed. This was the same class of sequences that lived inside the Aldridge convergence problem. Not a similar class. The same class. The problem in front of him was asking a narrower version of the exact question that Aldridge's 50-year-old problem asked, and the approach Marcus had been developing in his notebook for 6 weeks. The recursive self-reference approach that he had invented because he could not find an existing method that worked, applied here. Directly, not approximately, directly. He stopped working on problem 4. He opened his composition notebook to page 47 and read through all 14 pages one more time slowly, checking each step. His handwriting in the notebook was smaller than his handwriting on the competition sheets. Tighter, quicker, the handwriting of a person writing for themselves rather than for a reader. He read every line. He checked every transition from one step to the next. He looked for the place where the argument might break, the joint that might not hold under pressure. He did not find one. He picked up his pencil and wrote 8 more lines below the 14 pages. Lines that extended the argument, that connected the recursive technique directly to the Aldridge convergence structure, that closed the proof in a way that was clean and complete, and, as far as he could tell, correct. He looked at what he had written for a long time. Then he raised his hand. One of the junior staff members running the competition came over. "I need a second answer sheet," Marcus said quietly. "I want to submit something that is not part of the round." The staff member looked uncertain. "That is not standard." "I know," Marcus said. "I need to speak to one of the judges." The head judge that year was Dr. Patricia Osei. She was 58 years old, a professor of pure mathematics at Northwestern, and had been involved with the Invitational for 12 years. She had a reputation in the mathematics community for being precise, direct, and completely unimpressed by prestige. She had also, 8 years earlier, published a paper that had cited the Aldridge convergence problem as one of the most elegantly stated open problems in the field. When the staff member came to her with Marcus's request, she came to his desk herself. Marcus showed her the composition notebook. He explained what he had been working on for 6 weeks. He explained the connection he had found that morning between his work in the notebook and the Aldridge convergence problem. He showed her the 8 new lines he had written in the last 20 minutes. Dr. Osei read in silence for approximately 4 minutes. Then she looked up. "Are you saying this is a proof?" she said. "I think so," Marcus said. "I am not certain. I think the argument holds, but I might have made an error somewhere in the middle section that I cannot see because I wrote it myself." She looked back at the notebook. "Where did you learn this technique?" "The recursive self-reference approach in section 3. "I made it up," Marcus said. "I could not find a way through using standard methods, so I tried to build a new one." Dr. Osei was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I need to show this to someone." She took the notebook to the far side of the room, where a second judge, Dr. Raymond Price from the University of Illinois, was sitting. She put it in front of him without saying anything. He read it. He read it again. Then he looked at her. They walked back to Marcus together. "Who else has seen this?" Dr. Price asked. "No one," Marcus said. The room was still in the middle of round 4. Students were bent over their answer sheets. Aldridge was standing at the side of the room with his arms crossed, watching the clock. He had not looked at Marcus since the break. Dr. Osei crossed the room and spoke quietly to Aldridge for 30 seconds. His face did not change while she spoke. Then she handed him the composition notebook. He opened it to page 47. He read for a very long time. The round ended. Students set down their pencils. Papers were collected. Everyone waited. Aldridge was still reading. He turned pages slowly. He went back to earlier pages and reread them. He turned to the 8 new lines at the end and traced each one with his finger. His other hand, which had been resting on the table beside him, closed slowly into a loose fist and then opened again. He closed the notebook. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. 3 seconds of absolute silence in a room of 412 people. Then Dr. Patricia Osei stood up. "I need everyone's attention," she said. Her voice was calm and entirely certain. "What I am about to say is not related to the competition results. It is related to something that happened this morning that I believe this room deserves to know about." She paused. "This young man, Marcus Coleman, age 12, from James Weldon Johnson Middle School in Woodlawn, has submitted a document this morning that contains what appears to be a valid proof of the Aldridge convergence problem." Someone in the middle of the room said, "What?" "I want to be careful with my language, Doctor." O.C. continued. It requires formal peer review before it can be officially verified. But Dr. Price and I have both read it carefully, and neither of us can find an error. The argument is complete, the logic is sound, and the technique he uses in Section 3 is, to my knowledge, entirely original. The room did not erupt. It did a different thing. It went very, very still, the way a room goes still when people are trying to catch up to something their brains have not finished processing yet. Andrew, from St. Matthew's Academy, was staring at Marcus with his mouth slightly open. His father, in the front row, was staring at the notebook in Aldridge's hands. Aldridge had not moved. Dr. Ozzie looked at him. "Franklin," she said, "do you have anything you want to say?" Aldridge looked down at the notebook. He looked at it for a long time. When he finally looked up and across the room at Marcus, something in his face was different. Not broken, not apologetic, but quieter. The certainty that had been there all morning, the absolute, settled certainty of a man who has never had a reason to doubt his own judgments, was simply gone. "The problem is solved," he said. His voice was even, controlled, but the whole room heard what it cost him to say it. "The solution belongs to Marcus Coleman." The room broke open. It took 45 more seconds for the applause to arrive properly, because people needed those 45 seconds to understand what they had just heard. And then it came all at once. Sudden, overwhelming, the kind of applause that happens when a room full of people realizes they have just witnessed something that will not happen again in their lifetimes. Marcus sat in his chair and did not know where to look. He had not expected this. He had expected maybe a note on his notebook, saying someone would look at it later. He had not expected Dr. O.C. to stand up in front of the whole room. He had not expected the sound that was now surrounding him from every direction. Andrew, the boy from St. Matthew's who had leaned across the aisle to tell him about his round 2 score, was on his feet. He was clapping. He looked at Marcus and he nodded, a small, genuine nod that said something that did not need words. One of the parents in the back of the room started crying. Nobody knew why exactly. Sometimes a thing just hits a person in a way that has nothing to do with logic. Aldridge had set the notebook down on the judging table and walked to the window. He stood there with his back to the room. Nobody approached him. Nobody said anything to him. There was nothing to say. Dr. O.C. came to Marcus's desk and put her hand on his shoulder. "Are you all right?" she said. "Yes," Marcus said. "Then is it actually right?" "The proof? I believe it is," she said. "We will have it formally reviewed within the week. But yes, I believe it is." Marcus nodded. He looked at his composition notebook, still on the judging table. 14 pages of work he had done alone in a kitchen on Friday nights. 6 weeks of thinking. 15 cents for a library printout 8 months ago. "My mom does not know I worked on that," he said. Dr. O.C. smiled at him. "She is about to find out." 2 hours later, Marcus was sitting on a bench outside Whitmore Hall when Mrs. Adrian Booker arrived at the university. Dr. O.C. had called the school, and the school had called Mrs. Booker. And Mrs. Booker had driven her 2009 Honda Civic with the cracked passenger window across the city in 31 minutes, which anyone who knew Chicago traffic would tell you is not possible. She sat down beside him on the bench. For a moment she did not say anything. She just looked at him. He looked back at her. "They told me what happened," she said. "I know. The proof too?" "Yes." She nodded slowly. She had been one of his teachers for 2 years. She had watched him sit in a 7th grade math class, answering questions he had known since 5th grade. She had written 16 emails about him to people who had not written back. She had spent $75 she did not have. She put her arm around his shoulders. "I need you to know something," she said. "Whatever happens next, the reviews, the papers, all of it, whatever happens, what you did in there today cannot be undone. Do you understand that? It is already true. Nobody can reach back and make it not true." Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Mrs. Booker," he said, "where did the registration money really come from?" She did not answer right away. "You paid it yourself," he said. It was not a question. She looked at him for a long time. "Your talent is not the school's problem to ignore," she said finally. "It is mine to find a way for." Marcus looked down at his shoes, regulation black, slightly scuffed at the right toe. tied in the double knot his mother had taught him when he was 5. He was 12 years old, sitting on a bench at the University of Chicago, having just done something that 60 professional mathematicians had failed to do in half a century. He did not feel like a genius. He felt like he needed to call his mother. Inside the hall, the competition results were being announced. First place went to Andrew from St. Matthews. His total score across all 4 rounds was the highest. Marcus had not finished round 4, had left 2 problems in round 2 incomplete. He had not won the competition. He did not mind. The $15,000 scholarship went to Andrew. The notebook went with Dr. Osei for formal review. 3 weeks later, Dr. Patricia Osei and Dr. Raymond Price submitted a formal verification paper to the Annals of Mathematics, one of the oldest and most respected mathematical journals in the world. The paper verified the proof in the notebook, line by line, and confirmed it was correct and complete. The technique Marcus had developed in Section 3, the recursive self-reference approach he had, invented because he could not find an existing method that worked, was identified in the paper as a genuinely novel contribution to the field. It had no name yet. Dr. Osei had been careful to leave it unnamed in the submission, pending a conversation with Marcus about what he wanted to call it. She called Gloria Coleman first. Gloria was at work when the call came in. She stepped outside the laundry facility into the parking lot and stood next to a chain-link fence, with her phone pressed hard against her ear, listening. When Dr. Osei finished explaining, Gloria said nothing for 11 seconds. Then she said, "Can you say that again, please?" Dr. Osei said it again. Gloria looked at the chain-link fence. She looked at the parking lot. She looked at the gray February sky above the west side of Chicago. "He did that on Friday nights," she said. "At the kitchen table. I thought he was just doing homework." "He was working on one of the most famous unsolved problems in his field," Dr. Osei said. "He did not know what it was famous for. He just knew it was interesting." Gloria pressed her free hand over her mouth. She stood there in the parking lot for a long time. "His father," she said, when she trusted her voice again, used to say Marcus was going to do something the world was not ready for. He passed away when Marcus was 4. He never got to see any of this. Dr. Osei was quiet on the other end. "He would have been so proud," Gloria said. Her voice broke on the last word, just slightly. Just enough. The journal published the verification paper 8 weeks later. The headline across the mathematical community was immediate and unanimous. A 12-year-old from the south side of Chicago had done what 60 credentialed academics had failed to do. The proof was correct. The technique was original. And the name attached to it, in the published paper, and in every subsequent reference in academic literature, was Marcus Coleman, not Aldridge, not anyone at the university, not any of the 60 mathematicians who had spent careers trying. Marcus Coleman, Woodlawn, 4 rooms and a flooding basement. The boy Aldridge had told to go home. 6 months after that morning in Whitmore Hall, on a Tuesday afternoon in September, Marcus Coleman sat at his kitchen table on Calumet Avenue, doing what he had always done on Tuesday afternoons, working through a problem, composition notebook open, 2 sharpened pencils, a glass of water his mother had put beside him before she went to sit on the small back porch with her own cup of tea. He had started at a new school in September, not a private school. He had been offered scholarships to 3 of them and had turned them all down. He had enrolled at an accelerated public school on the north side, with a mathematics program that had the resources to actually challenge him, which meant he took a train for 45 minutes each way and got home at 4:30 instead of 3. The house was the same, 4 rooms. The basement still flooded each spring, though someone from the city had finally come to look at it the week after the journal paper was published, when Marcus's name had briefly appeared in the news. Mrs. Booker still taught at his old school. He texted her sometimes when he found something that confused him, which was not often, but often enough. She always answered. At the kitchen table, in the notebook, past page 61, past the 14 pages and the 8 new lines, Marcus was working on something new. He had not told anyone what it was yet. It was still half-formed, still fragile. He was not sure it was right. He heard his mother come back inside from the porch. He heard her set her cup in the sink. He heard her footsteps in the hallway, stopping in the doorway. He did not look up. "You hungry?" she said. "Not yet," he said. She stood there for a moment in the doorway, watching him, watching the pencil move, watching the look on his face, that sharp, focused, almost startled look that she had been watching for years and still did not fully understand and did not need to. Then she said something quiet, just to him, just in the kitchen. "Your dad would have loved this," she said, "watching you figure things out. He always said that was the best thing, just watching you." Marcus looked up. His mother was already walking back down the hall. He looked at the notebook. He looked at the problem on the page. He looked at the pencil in his hand. Then he looked at the doorway where she had been standing. He was 12 years old. He had solved something that 50 years and 60 brilliant people could not solve. He had done it alone, in a kitchen, on Friday nights using a technique no one had taught him because no one had thought of it yet. And the most important thing that had happened to him this year was not the journal paper, not the applause in Whitmore Hall, not the photograph that had appeared in the Tribune, not Dr. Osie's phone call, not even the look on Aldridge's face when he realized the notebook was right. The most important thing was that his mother had stood in that doorway just now and said his father's name. He picked up the pencil. He kept working. If you have ever sat in a room where someone decided what you were worth before you opened your mouth, before you raised your hand, before you showed up with them a single thing you could do, remember this. They were not looking at you. They were looking at where you came from. They were looking at your shoes and your school and the neighborhood name they had already decided meant something. They were looking at every version of the story they had told themselves over 40 years about who belongs and who does not. They were not looking at what was in your hands. Marcus Coleman walked into that room with 14 pages of handwritten work in a composition notebook that cost $1.79 at the dollar store. He did not announce it. He did not challenge anyone. He just stood at the threshold with his feet planted and waited to be allowed in. And when they finally let him in, he showed them what he had. The work speaks. It always speaks. The only question is whether you will stay in the room long enough for it to be heard. Tell me something in the comments. Has someone ever underestimated you before you had the chance to show them what you could do? Tell me about it. Those stories deserve to be said out loud. If this moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you are not subscribed yet, do it now. Because there are more stories like this one, and I am not done telling them.